If you like what we do here on Skiba News Nation, please like and subscribe, and also share with others so we can grow the biggest truth-seeking community on the internet. Huge shout out to all of our Patreons out there. If you like bonus content, you want some extra Skiba News Nation stuff, please go to patreon.com/Skiba News Nation.
Welcome to Skiba News Nation, bringing you unfiltered views, news, interviews, discussions, and more. And now, here's your host, Jeremiah Skiba, award-winning musician and son of Rob Skiba.
With the son of the legendary Rob Skiba. Jeremiah Skiba, what's up?
With my great and insightful co-host, Mr. Jake Graham. It's like I don't even want to wake up.
He's on a quest for truth.
Hey, Skiba News Nation family. Today we have one of my favorite YouTubers here on Skiba News Nation. He's the host of Dearly Departed Tours on YouTube. He's an investigator, a historian, and please help me in welcoming Mr. Scott Michaels. Welcome.
Thanks, Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you. I literally watch every single one of your videos because, I mean, the level of detail that you go into when you it's like an investigative case that sometimes people overlook, and it's the dark side of Hollywood, which I very much appreciate and have been following you since probably your YouTube first started. I think I learned about you on like the Carpetbaggers channel of the tour, and then I had to learn more, and then I wanted to go out to LA, and man, I wish I could have visited your museum. But for people who don't know who you are and what you do, can you give us like a brief little intro?
Sure. Well, I started this whole celebrity death thing back in the late 90s when the internet was first taking off, and I authored a website called findadeath.com where I was chronicling the ends of celebrities' lives. Usually the biographies end, they died, the end. Well, that's usually where I pick up the ball, and I want to know all the details. I want to know where they were, what they were wearing, what they ate, where they ended up and who was there and the whole bit. So I was collecting facts about things you didn't know about the things you thought you knew everything about. And I got into real sightseeing in Los Angeles. I started off in the 90s, and then I started my own company in 2004 called Dearly Departed Tours, where it was the death styles of the rich and famous. It was a van-driven tour around 100 locations where famous deaths and scandals happened around Hollywood. And then we got into specialized tours. I best known, I guess, for the Manson thing. We did a documentary a while back called The 6 Degrees of Helter, Skelter. And I had we called it the Helter Skelter Tour, which was 50 miles, 4 hours, but it was packed with information all about the Tate-LaBianca murders. And so Dearly Departed went out of business back in, it's been about 4 years or 5 years now. And now I'm solely on YouTube. So it gives me the freedom to travel around and collect these stories virtually. Now I don't have to report to work and pay fees and all that kind of crap to own a business. Yeah. I can actually just have fun.
That's awesome, man. And you have like an amazing collection, and I wish I could have visited your actual location because you had the Jane Mansfield death car. And what's your favorite artifact? I always wanted to ask you that.
Well, it's probably that the car that Jane Mansfield was killed in. And it's I always say, if you either understand, you either get this stuff, or you really, really don't get it. And with that, with regards to that, something when you can see something like that, it's easy to get taken aback by it because it's such a violent, horrible thing. However, it's history, and so that's why I started collect. The first thing I collected was actually a fireplace from the Tate house when it was being destroyed in Benedict Canyon, where the first night of the Manson murders took place. And since then, oh my gosh, I collect, pieces of houses that have been destroyed. I can basically assemble a house from all the pieces of houses. I have bricks from Lucy's house and all these other celebrities, Betty White's. So I just collect odd bits of here and there. Some of the most unusual stuff I own is, well, I have let's see, I have a piece of the floor that Bobby Kennedy landed on. I have pieces of Patsy Cline's control board of the airplane that she was killed in, and a piece of John Denver's airplane that washed up in Monterey when he died. A tile from the swimming pool that Brian Jones drowned in 1969, and Sharon Tate's false eyelashes, and probably the weirdest is Mae West's dental work, her dentures. So it's just weird stuff, but we don't take it too seriously, but then we take what we do kind of seriously. It's just fun. It's history.
Yeah, that's why I love it. And I love the darker side. And my wife thinks I'm weird. I learned this from your channel, like the bar underneath a truck, like a 18-wheeler. There's a bar there, and it's called the Mansfield bar because that's where her car ended up going, and they put it there so a car wouldn't slide under it. And every time I tell her that story, she's like, "I know you've said that about 1,000 times," and I'm like, "Oh, it's a cool fact."
Yeah, and those who would dismiss it, saying, "Oh, you're just taking advantage of this poor woman," it's like, well, there's an element of exploitation, no doubt about it. Just why biographies exist, entire channels are true crime channels on television anymore. So it is interesting because it's not just solely exploitative. Her actual death caused things to change, and there are now the government regulations that you do have to have those bars at the bottom of trucks, so people can't drive underneath them anymore. So yeah, she changed automobile history or transportation history.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing about watching your channel is you do all that, explaining the backstory behind it, and it does change history, like you said. And I kind of first got into your channel when I was going down the Manson rabbit hole, and I love the fact that you did a Doors tour too, because I was obsessed with Jim Morrison, still kind of am, and just like his whole backstory. But we had on our show Tom O'Neill, who wrote Chaos, and I know that there's a lot of people that feel different ways about what his book is about, and he kind of like tries to dismiss the Helter Skelter theory. What are your thoughts about Tom O'Neill's book?
Well, I mean, the Helter Skelter theory is widely accepted, and it's not necessarily, there are elements of it. Vincent Bugliosi, the prosecutor, he took, I always sort of compare it to, and this is a bad comparison, but it kind of works for me. If you saw the play or the movie called Mamma Mia, the ABBA movie, they have a loosely based plot based on all these song titles. They make no difference, but all these song titles create this weird story. And that's what Bugliosi did. He took this fact, this fact, this fact, and wove together a story that he called Helter Skelter. All those elements existed, but that wasn't really what was going on. But Vincent Bugliosi never had to prove why anybody did anything, just that they did it. So he did his job. O'Neill's book, well, I mean, I got about halfway through it, and to be honest with you, I found it, he's an amazing historian. The research he's done has been fascinating. I don't subscribe to a lot of it, and I kind of got bored with the way he spoke about other, Vincent Bugliosi, and it was distracting to me because Vincent Bugliosi is someone that I'm quite fond of.
Right.
But the whole, I don't know, it spends a lot of time talking about Manson and the murderers, and I really like talking about Sharon Tate and Jay Sebring and the victims. So I don't like to spend too much time in, concentrating on Manson. Of course, that's an important part of this, and I'm fascinated by that. But after a while, I just got to go, it's just too much for me. I've got to get out of this and go back into into the nice side of things, if there is a nice side. That's why I loved Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because Tarantino gave those people smiles and laughs, and they walked and talked, and before that they were just black and white pictures and books, and that means a lot more to me than what the kooky, naked, dirty people were doing on the ranch, and then what ended up happening on those 2 nights. If it wasn't for that, we wouldn't be talking about it. So I'm not being dismissive of it. It's just my concentration. I just get exhausted going into that whole thing too much.
Well, you care more about the victims, and I respect that about you, because you kind of give them a voice by showing like where Jay Sebring's house was, or where his shop was. And so this is one thing I've always wanted to ask you. So Jay Sebring, hopefully I'm saying that right. He was the first male hairdresser in LA or something. Was he in business with Larry Geller?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I honestly, I don't know that name off the top of my head.
Because that would be a good Elvis connection, because Elvis's friend, he was really good friends with a guy named Larry Geller, and he always talked about being in LA's first hairdresser, whatever. And I always found that interesting. And if they're connected, that would be so interesting, because
I'm not going to say that's not true. He might have been one of Jay's proteges. I know there are 1 or 2 out there, but Jay Sebring revolutionized men's hairstyling, and that it didn't exist before. That was back in the 50s and the 60s. They called it the wet head, when people put Brill cream to make their hair look wet, and the DAs and like in Grease, the movie Grease. And so that was the men's hairstyle. It was either that or a crew cut, shaved. And that's how Jay started with hair, was doing cuts in the Navy, when he was in the Navy. And then he just started taking it into styling. And nobody ever did that for men before. And he also made custom toupees for people, which before you got these rugs, and Jay made it so they were actually, at the time, like an illusion, like they really looked real. So he started with an actor named Vic Damone, who was one of his first clients. And Vic Damone, who was a singer, told his buddy Frank Sinatra, who told da da da. And then it ended up being Peter Fonda and James Garner and Bruce Lee, who was a friend of his. He also cut Bruce Lee's hair, and Jim Morrison styled his hair for the album cover. That famous Alexander the Great image is a Jay Sebring creation. So he moved hairstyling for men into popular culture. He stopped being the wet head, and he was blow drying men's hair and styling men's hair. And it just changed a lot. And he was going to go national, probably international. He had a couple of salons. He had one in San Francisco. He had one here in Palm Springs. And I believe one still exists in Texas. So yeah, he was a big deal. He was a big deal in that industry.
Yeah, I live in Dallas. I don't know if it's anywhere close to here, but I'd love to go check it out, because
I want to say San Antonio, or I think it's San Antonio, but I still, it has a sign outside of it. I know that, but I don't remember what city it is. I've not been there. I love Dallas. Love Dallas.
Well, next time you come to Dallas, we're doing we're putting together a conference in October, or I guess we're in October, the 25th and the 26th. And I'll be doing a presentation on JFK and where I think the fatal shot came from. And I just find that whole thing fascinating. And I know you covered a case, if you want to call it that, one of your videos about a girl who had a connection to JFK, and people called her crazy and stuff. And I found that one really interesting.
Yeah, that would be Karen Cups in it, who was the daughter of a very prominent Chicago media personality, who was also very close to Richard Daley, the mayor at the time of Chicago, who was very influential in getting JFK elected. And Karen Cups in it was, she was a bit of a, I don't know, it's not very nice to say, but she was a bit of a scatterbrain, really. And, she had issues with stalking. She was the stalker, it was stuff was just over the top, the way she behaved. And one of the last things someone said or heard her say, supposedly, according to one witness, on a payphone, she said the president's going to be assassinated, or the president's going to be killed. And within a day or two, she herself was dead. So it was, it left a lot of, well, speculation. And Irv Cups in it, yeah, the father, he was, I don't think that, yeah, they never technically closed that case, but he was very adamant that that wasn't the thing. But one way or the other, they were influential in getting John F. Kennedy elected back in '63.
Well, Dorothy Kilgallen also has a call connection with JFK. I'm pretty sure. I did a Dorothy Kilgallen Histories Mysteries on my show. That's my favorite part of. I just love history and the creepy and the the mysterious part of it. The full story that we may not know, and the full story may not be told to us. But I like people that dig. So that's.
Yes, unanswered questions are very mysterious, unanswered questions for people who it's like Diana. It's like Marilyn Monroe. When people like that died, not necessarily at someone else's hand, but a lot of people went, don't have to worry about that anymore, because they were live wires and they had a lot of information. I don't believe in those particular, I don't believe there was a sinister aspect to either of them, but both, you could go there because a lot of people were relieved when they went away because they were just live wires. Marilyn, I don't think she did it to herself, but she had a lot of information about a lot of influential people. I don't believe anyone had a direct hand in it, but a lot of people went, well, there's one less person that has any information. But Diana, she was a live wire. That was a very convenient death for a lot of people, but I do believe it was a drunk driver. But there are still questions, as you probably well know, the Fiat Uno, the white car that nobody's ever been able to account for, so there's food for this. It's an endless supply of food for those theories.
And it's kind of fun. I find it interesting, and I think a lot of people find it interesting, and I don't know.
It's a legitimate way to explain away an obsession with those things. You kind of go, but the JFK thing is bottomless. You can how many years now? 63, 62, 60, something like that. 62, 64? I think. And 63 this year, I think. I think. But it was just a convenient. That's a loaded case. Quite literally a loaded case.
My personal theory is the storm drain. That's where I think the fatal shooter was sitting when he shot Kennedy. And I have like a whole thing that I'm gonna do like I'm a prosecutor and I'm convincing everybody that.
Wow, this is the first I've heard of that, to be honest with you. Where can you find that drain on Google Maps?
Yeah, you can. I built a map, and I actually have the trajectory of where the shot actually came from. Like, if you watch the Zapruder film, the way that his head sounds gory, but the way that his head goes back into the left. His back brace was actually keeping him up. So when he was shot in the neck, he kind of went like this, and he was towards Jackie. And then he went back into the left, which would have had to come from a downward trajectory. And it's right in front of the grassy knoll, right by the fence where everybody says there was a puff of smoke. So all those people that say that there was a puff of smoke, they would have been able to still see that puff of smoke if it came from the storm drain. And that storm drain connects throughout the city, and there's an outlet. And there have been many people that have said from that day. My grandpa was actually not in Dealey Plaza, but he saw Kennedy right before he went down the road during the parade. But a lot of people report that there was a guy that came out of this storm drain, and there's a lot of evidence that kind of points that way. And that's where I think it was many things. And so I think that's where the fatal shot came from. But,
do you think there were more than one shooter in different locations?
Yes.
Okay. Because that would explain away the ricochets, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Uh, okay, interesting. That's fascinating. I didn't know that. The thing about these things is like I can sit here and think about it, but I get distracted really easily. When you're in there, when we stayed in Dallas, we were only there for about 3, 4 days, but every time we drove past Dealey Plaza, it's like it doesn't matter. We're stopping. We've got to stop. And when you're sitting there in history, you could literally walk to these locations and see these things that have been infamous, notorious, where history happened, and it was never not moving to be there. It was such an important piece of history. And I don't know, there was a documentary on I don't know, maybe 10 years ago about that, solely about the JFK thing, and it wasn't narrated. It was all news clips. It was all oral history by people who were either there or reported on it, and the reverberations are just I never really realized it, how still today, the reverberations from that incident, it's fascinating, fascinating.
Well, if you ever come back to Dallas, I would love to take. I have like my own mini. I don't want to call it a tour, but I have in my phone all the places where Lee Harvey Oswald went that day, kind
Mhm.
of disproving the fact that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. And then I can show you like the storm drain stuff, and we can make a video out of it. If you're ever
I'd
back
love
in
that, yeah,
Dallas,
that would be does that woman still have that guest house where he was living?
yeah, she does. She's kind of weird about taking cameras in there. Like me and my wife were trying to get in there, and my mom at the time, uh, we were all trying to get in there, and she was like, "Yeah, come on in." And then once she heard that we were trying to like film, she was like, "Oh, well, it's going to be like $300."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We're like, "Whoa!"
Yeah, she did that
But
to us too. But it was yeah, we didn't pay it, but it was interesting enough to be in there. She claims it's the real furniture, but it's not. I know that for a fact because there was a guy who had a museum in Florida called the Tragedy and History Museum. And actually he was one of the original owners of the Mansfield car. He had that on display, as well as the ambulance from Oswald, as well as the furniture from his apartment that he acquired directly afterwards. So she'll claim that that's the real furniture. It's really not, but it doesn't really matter because you're still there and it's furniture from the house. You know what I mean? You may as well be. And so it's fascinating. But yeah, she was interesting. She was interesting. But my buddy took me to the house where he was living, and the staircase was still there, and there was some loose wood on it. So like, I have a
so
few artifacts from Dallas that was pretty wild. Oh, is that the storm
so
drain?
that's the storm drain, and that's the shot that the shooter would have seen. My grandpa's our producer, and he's off camera right now, but he's pulling up these things from my presentation. But that storm drain is literally so close. I mean, I took my phone at the time, and it was on a tripod, and I put it down towards like to see where it would
Mhm.
be, and it lined up so perfectly. It was kind of freaky.
Are you sure there's space enough for a human to go down there?
There was, and then Dallas City, the city of Dallas filled it so people couldn't go in there. But before they filled it up, I have a like a little piece of film of a guy going down there and, you know, showing that it was possible for
Hmm.
somebody to go down there and then run out the back.
Interesting. Very, very, very interesting. That museum is spectacular, the one they have up in the sixth floor. I do wish I do wish they put that display on the seventh floor and let you look through the sixth floor window. Do you know, I understand I understand the importance of keeping it that way, but you wanna see the real location, and I just like it could have looked like this, create that room somewhere else, but I think it would have been really important to go to that very window and see it. I know you get the
Uh,
same view from upstairs, but it's not the same thing.
I think it's weird that they don't let people up there. It's
Yeah.
like they don't want you to see what the official narrative is. And I think it's interesting because that's the first time the word conspiracy theorist was used to demonize people that thought, that the government wasn't lying to us, And we all know that they lie to us all the time.
Yeah,
So
well, sure, sure. When I did I was one of the last groups to go through the Ambassador Hotel where Bobby was shot back in '68, and when they were just before they started tearing it down. Have you seen that movie Bobby? I don't know if you've seen that one with Emilio Estevez did it. While they were tearing down the Ambassador Hotel, Emilio Estevez made a movie in what was left of the hotel called Bobby, and they actually reconditioned the lobby and the Coconut Grove, and they filmed. It was spectacular. While the hotel was being demolished over there at nighttime, they were filming in the actual locations there. It's an amazing thing. But when we went from the embassy room where Bobby spoke through the pantry where he was actually shot, it was another one of those things. You could take pictures anywhere in the hotel, anything you like, but not in the pantry, out of respect. It's like, hold on, hold on. We're exploiting this thing anyway, and all of a sudden you're going to have moral high ground and say, no, no, it's out of respect. It's like everything else isn't. They have the original window in there, for God's sake. And so that's a cop out. I think they're just trying to. I think they're probably trying to save face, and people go there or you can call them historians, you can call them curious people, you can call them ghouls. It all works, and just own it. Just own it.
Yeah, right.
I want to see.
Do you think Sirhan did it?
Well, again, you probably know a lot more about this than I do. I go through the motions of it. I personally am not a fan of, like you said, of conspiracy theories. So I can't say for sure because I don't know the science of it. I do know the people that were involved in it, and it's quite possible. And again, another one of those very convenient deaths. I find it's fascinating. Here's an aside story. I'm friends with Michael Channels, who has a channel devoted to the Tate-LaBianca murders. It's called Back Porch Tapes, a really amazing collection of film and video and interviews. And he was friends with Manson. He wasn't a fan of Manson's. He was friends of Manson. He would have conversations with Manson and say things like, well, you threw those girls under the bus, didn't you? And Manson, he could talk about that stuff honestly with Manson. And he told me one time the air conditioning was out at the prison when Michael was visiting. So they were in this little area. Manson was in this wing, sort of a private wing, but he could have visitors, and there's like little picnic tables in the middle. But all the guys, because it was so hot, air conditioning was out there walking around in their underwear and their BVDs or Fruit of the Limbs. And Michael was sitting there talking to Manson, and Michael looks up, he goes, "Is that Sirhan?" And Manson goes, "Yeah, you want to meet him? Come on over here. Hey, Sirhan, I want you to meet my buddy." It's like,
wow.
What is in his underwear, in this hot prison? It's like, what a very surreal situation that would have been. But that was a long answer to a question I don't know the answer to. I don't know enough about it to have an educated opinion. It's certainly convenient the way they did it. They summed it all up. And that's what America wanted back then.
Yeah, and I feel like it's important. What you do is you like document where historic things, like you're the person that gets something that is historically significant and explains it, and then it's I could pick apart it, like in my own brain, and I really like that about what you do, and yeah, man.
I'll talk about things, but I can't go too in depth because you go crazy. But I do. I mean, just with information, you'll never stop. Ultimately, a story has to end with what I do in these little biographies that I make, these videos. But I collect all this information over years, and then I can assemble them all into one place. Like right now, I'm working on Hervé Villachet, who was the little man, the little guy from Fantasy Island. And I've had footage of all different sorts of things that he had something to do with, where they filmed Fantasy Island, where where he died, and I interviewed the woman who was his girlfriend, who found him, and he was still alive. So I've assembled all these things, and again, it's the things you didn't know about, the stuff you thought you knew everything about. And because I have a profile, a lot of times people will come to me and say, give me information I haven't had before, or say, do you want Lucy's sink from her house? So, it's a collection, just a bizarre, fun focal point that I've become. And thankfully that has not turned into a negative for me, knock wood, but it's been interesting, and people have been generous, and the stories are fun to put together.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So while you were doing your tours, did anybody ever like what is the weirdest thing you've ever heard that maybe turned out to be true?
Oh boy, I wish I know there are I know there are stories like that, and I on a dime I can't think of one. There are some stories that just got weirder and weirder. The one of my favorites. Okay, and do you remember? You're pretty young. I don't know if you remember a show called Night Gallery. That was a Rod Serling show. It was his after after Twilight Zone went over. This was a '70s show, and it was like a horror version of the Twilight Zone, and that all these old stars would show up. And there was one in particular that was in the pilot, and it had to do with a painting of a cemetery. And Roddy McDowall plays his awful nephew, kills his uncle, and inherits his money. And in this is the cemetery in this painting, and it's actually of the house he inherited, and the cemetery's outside, and the uncle was just buried there. And little by little, he looks over and there's a disturbance in the cemetery. Then he looks over and there's hands coming out of a grave. Then he looks over, the painting is changing the whole time. And ultimately, this corpse is at the front door, and the front door opens, and it just that's not how it ends. But anyway, that episode is one of my favorites, and it was directed by a guy named Boris Sagal. And Boris Sagal is the father of Katie Sagal from Married with Children, from Sons of Anarchy. And Boris Sagal was filming a movie in the parking lot where of the movie shot from The Shining, that the actual hotel that they used to film the movie The Shining.
Yeah.
He was filming in that parking lot when he was decapitated by a helicopter. So it was like all these really odd things. It just spells a bizarre story, and I love stuff like that. Stuff that is like, are you kidding me? That's nuts. There's a true crime story that was on my tour, a murder of a screenwriter by the name of Robert Leese. And Robert Leese was blacklisted during, the McCarthy era. They accused him of being a communist, and his career was over. And this is back in the 50s. And he was finally in the 1990s getting recognition. They were bringing him to celebrate him because he was wrong during the 50s. And he was in his 90s, and he had a girlfriend. His wife had died of cancer. He finally has a girlfriend. They live in this quiet little street in Hollywood. And one morning at 5 a.m, this guy didn't even break into the house. The door was open, and he walked into the house and grabbed a knife and went to the room where Robert Leese was sleeping and sawed his head off. Then he took the head with him and hopped the back fence, went out the back door, hopped the back fence. It's kind of gruesome what he did, but he took his belt off and looped the belt from Robert Lee's neck through his mouth and tied it and put it over his shoulder like a satchel. And then he hopped the back fence and broke into a house there where a guy was on the phone with Southwest Airlines making a reservation. So he leaves Robert Lee's head on the bed, and he goes into the room where he's on the phone and kills him, stabs him with a fireplace poker, and cuts his penis off. And then he takes off in the guy's Mercedes. And then the next day he's arrested at Paramount Studios, trying to break into Paramount Studios. It just gets weirder and weirder. And then one day, on the tour, I was doing the tour, and I would pass this house, and I got a phone call left on my machine, and forgive me, I don't remember her name. Helen. Oh, I forget what her name was, but she said, "I see that you pass Robert Lee's house, and I want to know exactly what you say. My name is Helen." And I can't remember her last name. And she says, "I was Robert Lee's girlfriend at the time, and I'm the one that discovered his decapitated corpse. And I have lots of details about the case. And if you want to know any information, call me." It was like the call I wanted, in my life. Turns out she worked for the Associated Press. She covered the Manson trial. She was a before the Kinsey report, which studied, human sexual behavior. She was before that. And she's told me very proudly, she was the first person to ever say the word masturbate on public television, so on national television. It's just, that case is just fascinating to me. That it just unfolded as the most bizarre thing.
Yeah, I've never heard that story. That's a pretty intense story.
It was and the crime scene photos are insane. And I mean, one of the most gruesome things I've ever seen in my life. They're not out there. I knew somebody who worked at the police department and gave them to me, but they're out there, just so crazy. The poor guy is just laying in bed, and this nut job who was a stripper in a gay bar. I just
It's random.
Great story.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to ask you about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because you had a lot to do with the locations and making it look the way it looked, kind of. Can you tell me more about that?
Well, we did the documentary, The 6 Degrees of Helter Skelter. My friend Mike Dorsey directed it, and it was released, gosh, I don't remember, probably maybe about 15, 20 years ago by now. I don't even know. And one day at the office, I got a phone message and saying that Quentin Tarantino, his assistant, wants to talk to you. So, and there were rumors around that he was going to be doing a movie about Manson, and I was like, no, he's not. That's ridiculous. I can't believe that. But I went to his office to meet with him. I figured I was going to meet with a dozen people, and we were going to be at a table or something, and maybe he'd be there. And there was a dozen people, and I got introduced around. And then somebody said, "Do you want to meet QT?" I'm like, "Sure, why not?" So we went to his office, and my documentary was on his desk. And he introduced me, and his second director introduced me to him, and then they shut the door, and he and I talked for about 2 hours about it. And he picked up my documentary because I love this. I love this so much, and this is what I want to do. I want to, the locations, because that's what we did. It wasn't how, it wasn't why they did anything, but it's where they did it. Where they threw the clothes off the cliff, where they hosed off in the driveway, where they dropped off Rosemary LaBianca's wallet in the gas station. So that's what we did, and that's what he responded to. So we talked quite a bit about the people and some things about the motivation of the crime. And then when he said to me, he said at the end of the meeting, he says, "What I'm really looking forward to doing is bringing 1969 back to Los Angeles." And I had my jacket on. I go, "I got to show you this. I got to show you this." And it's a tattoo. This is 1969 on it. And he was like, that clicked for him because that's what he was doing. And when he did it, it was fascinating because there was no CGI. He actually put stores back where they were in 1969, the record store, the Army surplus store, this restaurant, that movie theater. He went to those real places and put up the facades. And then you see the old cars and parking meters and then the billboards and then the extras. I mean, it was time travel. It was absolute time travel.
Dude,
And
that is
he
so
would
cool.
reach out and ask weird facts. He wanted to know which book that Abigail Folger was reading when she was in bed, when Susan Atkins, dragged her out and ultimately was murdered. He wanted them to know the name of the book. And then I told him that Mark Lindsay of Paul Revere and the Raiders told me that he lived in that house, and he had composed or co-composed a couple of songs on the piano in the house where the tape murders happened. Well, I know for a fact that Sharon and Roman rented the house, and it was furnished. So it was the same piano that these songs by Paul Revere and the Raiders, which are very well known, was in the room when Sharon was killed. And things like that are like, wow, these important events, they echoed off of these items. And to think that an important part of pop culture history, being a couple of top 10 songs, were actually recorded on an instrument that was within 15 feet of where this horrible thing happened, those are those are moments that I can't shake. Those are things that I find the most fascinating. So
Yeah, that's so
he was loving it. I mean, he would share really nerdy facts with me too. When we were at the El Coyote, where they supposedly had their last supper, we were on front of it, and he was pointing out certain things around the neighborhood where they were and what was going on that night. It was fascinating. I was expecting it to be like a dude kind of a thing and really exhausting, and it wasn't. He's legit. He respects people, and he gets the people who are good at what they do. No, he doesn't pretend to know everything. He'll go to people who can help him, who are there. Like the choreographer at the Playboy Mansion scene, which was Tony Basil, who was famous for being, "Hey Mickey" in the '80s, the song. But she was a choreographer. She was in Viva Las Vegas. She was in beach movies in the '60s, and she did all that stuff. So he hired her to come and do the choreography. Why not get the real one while she's here? So they did the go-go dancing, and they were taught by Tony Basil. So I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I love that movie so much because a lot of period pieces that they put out doesn't feel like the real thing. Like it doesn't feel authentic. And that movie is probably the most authentic feeling movie that I've ever watched.
It
Like
was. That's the thing.
I
Yeah.
felt like I was there. And I feel like you had a big part of that. And I think that's so cool that is the thing. And
Yeah,
I
it
don't
was
know.
a magical summer being involved with that, and when it came out, that it was just, yeah, it was magic. It really was time travel. And shortly afterwards, COVID hit, and then we went out of business. And it was sort of like, now in retrospect, the perfect bookend for me to leave Los Angeles, because it was the most perfect thing. The people that I'm obsessed with were alive and walking and talking, and seeing them smiling as they walked into the El Coyote, watching them pull up in that yellow car, Abigail Folger's car. It was mind blowing. So it was a very special time, and I do love that movie so much.
Yeah. I hear that they're doing a second one, but that could just be rumor. I don't know.
No, they're filming now. They're shooting. It's for Netflix. It's a I don't know how long it's going to be, but Brad Pitt is Cliff Booth, the stunt man, and it's life. I think it's going to be. I think it takes place in 1977. So they're currently setting up all around Los Angeles, and Tarantino is the writer, but he's not involved in the filming. But they are doing the same thing they did in certain parts of Los Angeles for the year 1977, and Brad Pitt is filming it for sure. And there's also like a 4-hour version of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood that'll come out, because I was involved in the scenes with Jay Sebring's house and also Jay Sebring's salon. They actually used Jay's house because my friends own it, and I introduced Quentin to them. And so they shot up there for about a week, and then they restored Jay's salon in the spot where Jay's salon was. And they didn't use either of those things in the movie. So I spoke with Barbara Ling, who was the production manager, who did all that stuff. In fact, she did the Doors movie too. If remember when they were walking down Sunset, that was Barbara Ling. That was all her doing. And I said, what about this scene that wasn't used? And he goes, everyone knows. She said, everyone knows that Quentin made a 4-hour movie or a 4.5-hour movie. So we'll see that other footage at some point. But it was, and I know somebody who worked for Jay back then, and she was a hairstylist, and she was the hairstylist for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And she said, here I am in the salon where I really worked over 50 years ago, and I'm taking a cigarette break in the same place I stood 50 years ago, taking a cigarette break. And it was like, those are moments, those are really insane, moments. Only in LA moments.
Yeah, that is so cool. That is so cool. Yeah, well, I think our audience is gonna love your channel. I mean, I like the stuff you did on Liberace too, like the interview you did with the guy that was his neighbor, right?
He would call himself his protege, Liberace's protege. He did live in the guest house at Liberace's house, and he did perform with Liberace. I'm not quite sure. I don't remember exactly what their relationship was. It wasn't anything tawdry. I mean, there was nothing like that going on, but he was there when Liberace died. And yeah, these are those stories to there's not a lot of people left that were there, that have these stories to tell. And so it's fortunate. It's really fortunate to be able to have that opportunity to find them, and also to be willing to talk about things that a lot of people wouldn't want to talk about. So I've been fortunate to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, thank you for your time, and I greatly appreciate your channel and what you do. And if you come to Dallas, man, I would love to shoot a video with you. And where can our audience find all of your work?
Well, I'm on everything. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. If you just look up my name, Scott Michaels, you'll find it on YouTube. And on my Instagram, which is I am Scott Michaels, there's a link to every single thing I do. So it's my website, it's my Facebook, it's my all that kind of business too. But best thing to do is just on YouTube, and I've got my email contact and everything is there. And so yeah, and we're going to open our museum again. Everything's in storage. We still own everything. I have the bed that Rock Hudson died in, and I have so much stuff, and everything's in storage. And hopefully, we're going to be opening here in Palm Springs, which is why we chose it. When we were originally looking for a home to rehouse everything, we went to New Orleans, we went to Nashville, we went to Dallas. But it seemed Palm Springs has the Hollywood history to it, and Dallas. The tourism is different there. They're there for, JFK usually, and nobody probably even knows, not a lot of people, I'll say, would know who Jane Mansfield is. Whereas here, Jane had a history. Sinatra, Marilyn, they all had, Palm Springs was became a big thing because the studios had a 2-hour rule in the 40s and the 50s that you had to be within 2 hours of Los Angeles when you were working on a project. So thus Palm Springs being so close was a very popular place for someone to have another home. And so that's how it got the Hollywood history. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be opening our museum again soon. Meanwhile, the collection continues to grow.
That's awesome. Can I come to the grand opening when you do?
Oh, that'd be fun. Yeah, please, please. That'd be great. And I've actually working on a project over the years. We have had like weekends where people come to Los Angeles and we would do like a social weekend. We'd have amazing speakers and we would travel to locations, the police museum where they have displays on the Black Dahlia, and then we went to the El Coyote for dinner, which is where Sharon Tate supposedly has her last supper. And then we would go to Vitello's where Robert Blake ate with Bonnie Lee Bakley. I mean, it was a group of 50 or 60 people. We'd do all these really cool events. And ultimately, the goal of them was to raise money to mark a grave for a celebrity who has died and has no grave marker. Some of them, like the Motion Picture Country Home, where a lot of people who don't have means, some people that worked in a time when there were no such things as royalties or residuals, the Motion Picture Home, they could live out their days there and they would provide them a grave, but that's all. They wouldn't provide them a headstone because they're expensive and they'd be doing it all the time. So we took under the plight of buying, gravestones for a lot of celebrities that wouldn't be known otherwise. People, we've sort of, there's a thing about saying their name out loud. You die twice. The first time you die, you physically die. The second time you die, or the last time you die, is the last time someone says your name out loud. And that's why we sort of keep things going. And I arranged to have Ken Weatherwax, who played Pugsley from the Addams Family. His family had an urn with him in it, and I arranged with them to work with the cemetery to have him placed in a grave that now has his name on it. So we stopped doing that because I don't have those weekends anymore. But I made an exception because this year I found out about 2 months ago that Elsa Lanchester, who was the bride of Frankenstein, and of course many other things, but that's what she's best known for, with the crazy hairdo with the white streaks, and we found out that her ashes are actually in a memorial rose garden, actually underneath in a storage area of a cemetery, and I just found that out. And nobody knows that. Everyone assumed that she was scattered at sea, but I've seen the documents and I know for a fact that she's there. So we're raising the money to have a marker placed on a wall very close to where her cremains are. So people will be able to go there knowing that she's there, but nobody's known that. Well, somebody has actually, because a buddy of mine told me about it, but it's not very well known. Even I've just got a book that was written about her, and like very recently, and at the end of the book, she was scattered. Nobody knows where, but she is actually at a cemetery that I know of, and we're getting her a marker. So I'm very excited about that. It's just, I can say their name. People can go there and actually, be there where she lays forever, and she deserves that recognition.
Right. I that's so cool that you do that. And how can people support that, like in our audience, if they want to help with that part?
Well, I actually, you're the first person I've told about this. I haven't put it up there, but I will be putting up like a sort of like a fundraiser for it. It's not that much money, but people like to be part of that. And
Right.
and so I'll be putting that. If you go to my YouTube channel, basically, I'll be putting up a video probably in the next day or two mentioning that and how people could contribute if they want to, or just follow along where things are going. It's just really cool. It's just really, really cool to give people sort of that recognition, and I could be a catalyst to that. That makes me very, very happy.
Yeah. Well, I'm honored to hopefully call you my friend now.
Well,
But
Jeremiah, this has been fun. I've really enjoyed it, and thanks to your grandfather too for producing your show.
yeah, he's the best. And yeah, anytime you want to come on, we would love to have you, and it's been fun.
Thank you. Thanks very much for asking me.
You're welcome. Thank you.
As we proceed into whatever comes next, and clearly something's coming next.
So you must have a digital ID.
You cannot. You're controlling many things.
We create a pretend world.
A gate or a stargate or a portal, and ILU is a transliteration of EL, or an angel or a god.
Of these models, these are getting quite significant, and we continue to flash the warning lights on this. I think the world is not taking us seriously. I don't know what else we can do there, but this is a very big thing coming.
There's a revolution. Some people can get their heads cut off. It's like we're expecting to see really unexpected things and to win.
Loss of control incidents where that's kind of like the sci-fi movie.
Digital currency that will allow them to punish us from a distance and cut off our food supply. Every right that you have is transformed into a privilege contingent upon your obedience to arbitrary government dictates.
The truth movement needs a revolution. Enter TrutherCon, Dallas, Texas, October 25th and 26th. Elite researchers boiled down decades of intel into essential revelations, fueling special panels that extract the most fascinating, urgent conspiracies threatening our world today. Break free from the oversaturated echo chamber, experience refined discussions, forge deep personal ties with fellow truth warriors, and confront time-sensitive deceptions head-on, from biblical prophecies to modern cover-ups. Speakers include Gary Wayne, Dave Weiss, Lucas Cameron, Kay Pochi, Jeremiah Skiba, Josh Keith, Brother Theo, Mikey Jenny, and a live performance from Bryson Gray. This is your moment. Tickets at TrutherCon.com. Join the awakening in Dallas. TrutherCon, truth is not a conspiracy. Do you have a love for the truth?
If you like what we do here on Skiba News Nation, please like and subscribe. And also share with others so we can grow the biggest truth-seeking community on the internet. Huge shout out to all of our Patreons out there. If you like bonus content, you want some extra Skiba News Nation stuff, please go to patreon.com/Skiba News Nation.
Son of the legendary Rob Jeremiah Skiba.
It's like they don't even want to wake up.